All right, let's talk about something every student knows all too well: pressure. You've got midterms, finals, papers, and, just life in general. But what if you could actually change your relationship with all that pressure? Today, we're going to break down the psychology of stress so you can learn not just to survive it, but to actually use it to your advantage.
So let's start with the big question, the one I'm sure you've asked yourself before. Why is it that some days a big deadline feels completely crushing, like there's no way you can handle it, but other days, that exact same kind of pressure makes you feel laser-focused, like you're totally in the zone? Well, the answer isn't about the pressure itself. It's all about how your brain decides to deal with it.
Okay, so let's get this straight from the get-go. Stress isn't just some outside force that attacks you. The science shows it's actually a transaction. It's an interaction between you and what's going on around you. And honestly, just thinking about it that way is a total game changer. Because if it's a relationship, that means you actually have a say in how it goes.
And that idea leads us straight into our first major revelation: the power of how you appraise a situation. Seriously, how you first evaluate a stressful moment is probably the single most important factor in how you end up feeling. It all comes down to a really simple, split-second decision that your mind makes.
So what's that decision? Well, you're either seeing a situation as a threat or you're seeing it as a challenge. I want you to picture a mental scale. On one side, you've got the demands, that tough exam or that huge presentation. On the other side, you've got what you believe are your resources, your study habits, your preparation, your confidence. If it feels like the demands totally outweigh your resources, your brain flags it as a threat. But if you feel like you've got enough resources to meet that demand, it gets framed as a challenge.
And these two appraisals create completely different kinds of stress. When you see something as a threat, it leads to what the endocrinologist Hans Selye first called distress. That's the bad kind, the negative, overwhelming feeling that just tanks your performance. But a challenge appraisal? That leads to eustress. That's the good stress, the motivating, energizing kind that actually helps you perform better. It's that feeling of being locked in and ready to go.
And get this isn't just some mental trick. Your appraisal creates real, actual, measurable changes in your body. A challenge response makes your heart more efficient and keeps the stress hormone cortisol low. Your body is literally primed for peak performance. A threat response does the exact opposite. It constricts your blood vessels, jacks up your cortisol, and physically holds you back from doing your best work.
So, if our appraisal is that powerful, the next big question is, who's in control of it? Are you just along for the ride, or are you the one behind the wheel? This brings us to our second big revelation: the difference between being a driver and being a passenger in your own life.
Let's talk about the passenger. A passenger has what psychologists call an external locus of control. When things go wrong, it's never their fault. The professor was out to get them, the test was unfair, or they just had bad luck. They feel like life just happens to them and that they're basically powerless to change the outcome.
But the driver, they operate from a totally different place, an internal locus of control. Drivers believe they are the ones who create their own success. They don't really believe in luck. They believe in hustle. They focus on the things they can control, and when they hit a roadblock, they look at their own actions to figure out what they can do differently next time.
And really, this is the whole point. Choosing to be the driver is about choosing to take ownership. It's about taking responsibility not just for your wins, which is easy, but for your failures too. This single mindset shift is the foundation for turning those scary threats into challenges you know you can rise to.
Okay, that brings us to our final revelation. Because let's be honest, taking responsibility for failure can be terrifying. For so many students, failure feels like the ultimate threat. So what if we could totally reframe it? What if failure isn't the end of the story, but actually a necessary step in the process?
This is where the brilliant work of psychologist Carol Dweck comes in. And this quote, man, it says everything. The secret to thriving isn't about avoiding failure at all costs. It's about finding a passion for pushing yourself and sticking with it, especially when things get tough. That right there is the heart of a growth mindset.
And the difference here is just huge. If you have a fixed mindset, you believe your intelligence is basically set in stone. So every single task becomes a test to prove how smart you are, which makes you want to avoid any real challenges where you might fail. But with a growth mindset, you believe your abilities can be developed with effort. So why waste time just trying to prove you're great when you could be busy getting better?
This mindset lets you see failure in a whole new light. It's not a final judgment on who you are, it's just data. So here's a simple process. 1. Acknowledge what happened without beating yourself up. 2. See that setback as super valuable feedback that's just showing you what didn't work. 3. Use that feedback to adjust your strategy. And 4, the most important step, try again. See? It's a learning cycle, not a dead end.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. How do we actually put all this into practice? Well, we can combine these 3 big ideas into a simple, really powerful toolkit you can use anytime you start to feel that pressure building up.
Here it is, your mental checklist. 3 simple questions. First, the appraisal. Am I looking at this as a threat to run from or as a challenge to take on? Second, the agent. Am I acting like a passenger and blaming everything else, or am I being the driver and taking control? And third, the mindset. If I mess up, is this the end of the world, or is this just really useful feedback?
Because at the end of the day, your ability to handle pressure, to learn from your mistakes, and to succeed, that's not some fixed trait you were born with. It's a skill. It's a muscle you can build. It's a mindset you get to choose every single day. Your potential isn't some fixed point. It's limitless. So the only real question left is, are you willing to grow?